Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing today? Hope you guys are doing good. Today, we have a very special, very special little lesson for you guys. Okay? Today's lesson is going to be a basic skill assessment test that you guys can do alongside with me. So, what I want you guys to understand what this is going to be. So, we are going to do a little test over the next hour. You guys can save this video if you guys want, and I'll post it on YouTube too. But this is a basic skill assessment to help you understand where you need to get better. This is going to be a basic understanding of what you need to do in order to get to that next level in your art. Okay? So the basic skill assessment is going to consist of there's 8 topics. Those 8 topics are going to take 5 minutes per topic. No erasing. Being messy is okay. The point of this is not just to draw a single element, but it's to demonstrate an understanding of the topic. Multiple doodles is okay. So each one of these, in order for you to show me that you understand the topic, you're going to probably have to draw more than one drawing. Oh, and there's one more rule. One more very important rule. No shading. Okay? That is going to be incredibly important here. No shading. Shading, no shadows, nothing. I want you to create depth with your art through your shapes. So that is why shading is not allowed. So if you guys want to draw alongside with me, hit that little share button. Boom, 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 boom. Hit that little share button, and then let's start off. We will put 5 minutes on the clock, and we will see if I can properly explain a topic within 5 minutes of just me being on there. So I will start our lesson when we have 150 people. When we get to 50 shares. When we get to 50 shares, we will start our skill test assessment test. So that'll give you guys time to actually get your stuff together, right? Like once you get this number right here up to 50, then we will start. But meanwhile, I want you guys to go grab a piece of paper, grab some sketchbook paper, grab something like your iPad or whatever. If you use your iPad, just don't erase, okay? Just don't erase. That is the only caveat here. Do not erase. So when we get to 50 shares, we'll start our lesson for today. If you guys are just joining us right now, we are doing a skill assessment test today, and I'm going to be doing it with you guys as well. So you guys will see where my strengths lie, when my weaknesses lay, and I'm going to explain why we need to learn and why I ask you guys to do each one of these. After we do the first one, I will tell you why we do this. But I want you guys to ask yourself, when you start doing this, I want you to ask yourself, why would he ask me to draw a human head? What is it about the human head that he probably wants to know that I know? And then to the best of your abilities, I want you guys to actually complete these within 5 minutes, all right? So we're almost there. We have 17, we need 50. We need 50 shares. And then we'll start. I'll talk a little bit about the past lessons while we get there. So yesterday we were talking about clothing. We were talking about how clothing works, how clothing affects how our bodies are affected by the shapes, how to see them in the top, the bottom views, and how to start modifying your perspective to be able to see them properly. Things like shorts, socks, clothing, hoodies, and stuff like that are something that, normally, is very hard for people to learn. Okay, so we got to 50. Cool. So let's have a timer on the clock right here, and let's start our first topic. So the first one that I have to tackle is a human head. So how can I describe a human head and my understanding of it the best? Well, the way that I'm going to try to do this real fast is by showing a demonstration of how to build the face in a couple different ways, right? How to determine something, has the measures, what parts of the face are there. So that would be a measurement for spacing. If I went from the side, I would show that I understand the same spacing on the front and the side, and I would try to replicate that same pose. Not necessarily trying to do a turnaround or anything like that, just trying to demonstrate that I know where elements fall. I would have to demonstrate that I understand a human head. Well, a human head, I'm not going to go into hair because it's not necessarily something that an average human just needs to have. But I could start making sure that I understand where my neck goes, where it comes out, maybe a basic feature like, I don't know, a 3/4 view as well, and then just demonstrate in the 5 minutes that I can actually understand a human structure of a head. Right? If you want to go in deeper, you can go in and show that you can draw everything in different styles, because I still have about 2-3 minutes left, right? So I can demonstrate that I can take that concept and apply it to different versions of a head. Furthermore, demonstrating that I understand what I'm drawing. I can also demonstrate that I know what I'm drawing by just simply creating the basic shapes that consist of a normal face, and actually showing that I know the volume of it, the flat side, the cuts. I can demonstrate that I know a human head by going into the next element as well, and just showing how I could understand that something has a skeletal structure and how that would replicate onto an actual drawing of a face. Right? I know that's a little small. Let me zoom in. Let me move that down. So we still have about 2 minutes left. So I'm going to start going a little bit deeper. I'm going to start showing that I understand how the brow muscles and how the nose bridge and how the nose has depth. I'm going to demonstrate that I understand the basic flat parts of the face and the basic geometry that consists of it. Right? Still have about 1.5 minutes. I can start demonstrating other things like, I don't know, little tiny rules like the worm rule for your eyebrows and the rubber band rule for your mouth, and how you can deviate that into different styles. Let's see, we still have about 1 minute left still. And understanding how your head can be simplified from even just the most basic of shapes to more complex anatomy by just understanding a little bit about the depth that perspective creates. Right? Just by understanding a tiny bit about how your basic shapes move, you can take something from incredibly simple to incredibly complex to incredibly stylized. And in a way, just understanding the basic concept of perspective, front and back, is going to give you an idea of understanding your basic head shapes. So with that, I have 10 seconds left. I would like to thank my audience for watching me explain this first topic. Thank you so much. If you guys get an understanding that I beep, 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 done. 5 minutes. So if you were drawing along, stop drawing, right? Stop drawing right now, and then go back into your drawing right now and be like, okay, cool. So out of the things that I drew, and I tried to explain my understanding of, what is actually made clear and what is actually not so clear? What parts of what I was trying to explain were hard for me? And then this is where you have to be self-critical, because the idea behind drawing a human head is just understanding the basic components of a face, right? The reason that we need to know how to draw a human head is because everything, mostly from comic books, right? Like Spider-Man, Wolverine, like anything that has a face is going to require you to know how to draw a human head. I forget what he has, like everything from comics to characters to doodles. Yeah, human head is just such a basic component in everything that people draw that you just have to know how to draw the components. And understanding, the more you understand, the more you have an idea of how to draw it, even if it's in a simple way, right? I'm not asking that you know like how to draw something like a portrait, just automatically, or a caricature. I'm not expecting you guys to have every single facet of the face mapped out, but an understanding of where things lay is the reason why we do this initial test. And it's also to test out how comfortable you feel about moving a shape in perspective. So if you only draw heads that are looking in one direction whenever you're doing this, then that means that you don't feel comfortable moving a basic shape in perspective. So therefore, what you're lacking is an understanding of how to move an object in perspective. So just by understanding that, by being self-critical and understanding that, hey, maybe I'm only drawing things in a front view. Maybe I'm only drawing things from this angle. I was afraid to explain how to turn my head up, right? Like if you were like, oh no, I don't know how to draw somebody looking up. If you are afraid of doing this, it's because it's hard for you to rotate this basic element that you drew before for a face, like this. You're having a hard time drawing it like that. Because in your head, it's harder because you haven't practiced enough drawing of a perspective shape, just going up. If you did that, then you wouldn't have a problem rotating a face in any direction or any angle, right? It wouldn't matter where you're looking. The face is just a basic shape. So this exercise alone tells you a lot of information. And this is something that I tell all my apprentices. This is something that I normally have every apprentice that I have do. So because it tells me if they're only drawing faces from a certain angle or very stylized faces, if it's a very heavily stylized face, I understand that maybe they don't know like the components of a face. If all their noses are like this, right? Or like this, or like that. Like if all the noses are super stylized, right? Then I have to question if they actually understand what like the nose is. If the nose is not coming in to the anatomically correct areas of a skeletal system, it's not always going to look right. It's going to look cool stylized wise, but it's not always going to look good or proper, right? The nose comes out of that little tiny hole in your face, and it's the cartilage that comes in from there. just like it's your eyeball that's on top of your eye socket, and then it just has like hemispheres that, like create your eye, right? And those are all the little bumps that you see on your faces. So this test, this little first part, is meant to tell me a lot of your knowledge about anatomy, perspective. It tells me your knowledge about stylization versus placement. It tells me your ability to move things in space, 3D visibility. Okay. It also tells me how creative you are at giving depth without shadows, because a lot of people can't draw faces without drawing shadows. So that also teaches me if you can use your line work for depth. All that information comes from that one part, from this one right here, right? So let's name that a human head. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. The next one is a human skull. So let's reset our clock, go to 0, and whenever you guys are ready, hit that little heart button, boop, 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 and let's go on to the next one. All right, so let's start the clock. Cool. So the next one, our topic is a human skull. Well, coming off the understanding of our head shape, so let's just tie it in together to that. If we have our head, an actual face, what are we actually looking at whenever we are drawing our characters? Let's just keep it super simple. What are we looking at whenever we are looking at a face? And how can we actually understand this in all the little bumps and stuff like that? So when we are drawing something like this, we are actually, all these little bumps and curvatures that you see in the little flat sides, that's what I'm going to try to explain to you guys right now. So our face, our head, especially in a 3/4 angle like this, is going to have a flat side to the side of the head. And then you gotta measure the middle part of this round shape. I like to draw my things only up until the nose part. I don't like to draw the jaw. I like to draw the jaw after. So this shape is very simple to trace. It's just round and it's a little bit flatter on the front. Okay, so that is going to be where my eye sockets, the little holes in which your eyeballs fit, are going to be around here. This part at the top of your eye is going to be your little temples that lead you to the back side of the flat side that you already drew. This back side is where your brain goes. So your brain goes in here, right? So normally it's considerably larger than we normally draw it, because your brain is supposed to go in there, right? If you draw it too small, it's going to not fit a brain. So, depending on the level of realism that you want to achieve, you're going to need to add an actual amount of mass in the back. So now that we have here, also at this point, this is where your nose canal is. And that is where your nose is going to originate from. Right? Your nose, let's say you have like a Pinocchio nose, it would originate from here. If you had a hook nose, it would come back and go down. But it always connects to the bottom and the top of these two channels. And that is how you know. Press stop for a second. We're not cheating here. That's how you know where your nose goes. So now that we know where our nose are supposed to go, what happens next? Where's our mouth? Well, underneath our nose, we have a slight curvature, and that leads us to our jaw, our upper jaw. Upper jaw connects to the around your cheekbones, and it connects into there. Same thing happens on the other side, and that is where you get these little bumps from. The little bump, the first one, the top one, is your brow line from your skull. This bottom one is your cheekbone that wraps around. Whoop, whoop. Then from here, in order to get the jaw right, like the bottom part, we need to understand where the ears would go, because that's where normally the jaw connects to. So you have to imagine where your ear would go, and right underneath that, right behind the cheekbone, is where your jaw comes down. Your jaw is a very interesting shape. Your jaw has like this kind of shape. Okay? It has like an L shape, and then you have your teeth on top that are kind of like half a cylinder. And then you have your chin. Also, it's like a little ball that's at the bottom. So when you're drawing these out, I like to first map out where my bottom teeth and my chin would be, because that's easier for me to map out like that, right? And then from where my ears are supposed to go, in this case, the jaw would be right here, the back of the jaw would be right here. You would have back of my ear, bottom of my ear, and then I connect that to my chin. That also provides me the ability to draw my shape with a little bit of volume. And then all I gotta do is add my molars coming back and a little bit of depth. And just like that, we have a skeletal system. So hopefully that demonstrates that I understand my knowledge about a human skull enough for you guys to know in the 5-minute span that we spent. So let's stop that. So again, just kind of like with this first one, right? Within the first 5 minutes, I was only able to really explain my knowledge of that by demonstrating an example side by side. But what is this for? Like, why is an understanding of the human skull necessary if you want to be, let's say, a character designer? Well, the reason that we need to know that is because you're going to be asked to draw a lot of really cool stuff, like a lot of cool stuff, right? Like ogres and, like monsters and just characters in general, like in human form. So an understanding of this allows you to be able to not just take those same elements and twist them and turn them into different things, right? Those same elements that we're drawing here are elements that you can take and turn and twist and make into anything you want. I can take that and make that into like a really cool monster, right? Or something like that. We just discovered how our jaw works. So back of my ear, and now just like that, I have a really cool jaw. And now I know where my back of my jaw is, so now I know how far back my mouth is supposed to go. Okay? If my jaw and my chin is underneath my bottom teeth, if here are my bottom teeth, then here is where my chin would go. If from the bottom of my jaw connects to that, just have to connect the lines. And then the more anatomy you know, let's say that you have to like draw like the neck and stuff. If I know that my spine connects to the back of my head, It curves in and then it curves out for my spine, right? If I know this and I understand this concept and I know my anatomy underneath, then all I need to do from that point on is just put a skin to this. And then I can just dress this guy up in any way I want. Right? So me understanding the human skull leads me to be able to draw things from a very cartoony way if I want to, right, to something more complex if you really wanted to actually achieve a more like complex understanding of what an actual human skeleton will be like, you know. But understanding the concept behind it is just a crucial concept if you're going to be an animator, storyboard artist, character designer, visual development artist, graphic designer. Anything that requires drawing requires you to pretty much understand these concepts, especially if you want to compete at a professional level with people, right? If you just want to keep it as a hobby, hey, more power to you. Like, that doesn't take away anything from you wanting to achieve anything, right? You can take it as a hobby and then be perfectly fine. Like, you don't need to compete against anybody. You don't got to do shit. But if you're trying to be in the actual competitive nature of being in the art world, you're going to need to have competing skills. And something like this, like an understanding of the human skeleton or the human skull, is going to be very important for you to understand, right? Because it's just going to be one of those basic knowledge that you're going to need to know in order to be able to get a job, like doing what you want to do for a living, right? You need to understand how shapes work, how they connect, how the body works. And then based on that knowledge, you can then take that and stylize it in any way you want to become, like, do what you want with it. You can have like a big nose, a hook nose, a pointy nose. It can have like really big mouth. It can have a little tiny mouth. You know, once you understand the concept, you can have big ears, little ears, hairstyles up the wazoo. Like, you can have anything you want on these characters. Bangs, a hat, you know. Once you understand the shape and the concept of this, combined with your basic perspective of shapes and knowledge, right? Once you understand these two understandings, then you combine these together, right? Now I have a basic shape, and I just have to add these elements. So now I know that everything connects somewhat like that. And now I have a nice little skeleton guy, just from a sphere, right? Just from adding the elements that I know. Eye sockets, middle, nose canal, mouth, and jaw. Boom. And then I can take those elements and take them and make them in any way, shape, or form I want. And it's always going to look very accurate. It's always going to look quite good because it's more of an understanding of where things are placed, more so than understanding how to draw it exactly how like a realistic thing would be. It's more like if you understand where it's supposed to go, if something just is supposed to be in that place, if you know how to place it there, that is the difference between somebody knowing how to place a nose in the shape of a little triangle and make it look perfect, right? And somebody that can draw like a nose perfectly rendered, but it just looks off because it's like not placed in the right spot. So I can make two lines look super cute just because I know where to place it. I can take like the simplest concept and then just boop, and that looks right because I know where to place it, right? It could be a big nose, it could be a small nose, same concept applies, right? The whole concept of being a cartoonist is being able to draw from memory, being able to draw from like as close to life as you can by simplifying it and making it silly and making it fun. So being able to draw the human skull is a very important theme. It's a very important thing to learn how to do. For all of you guys that are just barely joining us, we are doing a skill assessment test. So we are going to be going through every single one of these topics, and we are going to do it in 5 minutes per topic. We're not going to erase. Being messy is okay. If you want to draw along with us, we are going to go into the human body next. We're going to have to explain that we understand the human body to our best of our knowledge within 5 minutes. So if you guys want to join us, hit that little share button. Let's get that to like 100. Okay, let's get that to 100, and then we'll move on to the next one, which is the human body. So we're going to go on to, let's separate all these guys. Let's separate that. And so we will demonstrate the human body here. I'm even going to constrain myself to space. So the human body is going to be just, I'm going to demonstrate my knowledge of the human body in 5 minutes in this tiny space. Human body. Okay, cool. So once we get to 100 shares, once we get to that, then we will start. Let me reset all this stuff because you guys are quick at that. All right, let's see. So then after the human body, then I have to demonstrate my knowledge of an eye, front, three-quarter, and profile view of an eye. And then the next one's a four-legged animal with ears. So that one will be fun. A building, a vehicle, and a scene with foreground, middle ground, and background, and a few hands in different positions. So let's go on to the human body. Let's start our clock. And all right, let's see if we can explain knowledge of a human body. So the human body consists of what I like to break down to as to two very basic components that tell you the rest of the body shape. In the shape of your rib cage and your hip bones. By knowing and understanding this basic concept of a rib cage and hip bones, you can easily take a concept of a body and break it down into different structures really, really, really quickly. You can take a wide upper body and a very little upper body, and then you can understand how a superhero is made. And you can take a very small low upper body and make a really big lower body, and you can make somebody with like a dunk. Okay? Or really just big belly or whatever. But understanding these two basic concepts is very important, because these are your hard surfaces of your body. Are going to be your, add watercolor to this stuff. Your rib cage and your hip bones, right? By understanding these 2 points, where'd it go? No, there you go. By understanding those two elements of the body, posing is going to be very easy for you. Okay? If you understand where your legs, where your body, and your arms, and your neck, and everything comes out of, things become a little bit easier. Okay, so the basic understanding of a human body would consist of a rib cage in the shape of a simplified shape, the hip bones, again in a simplified way so that I can move it easily in space, and then a head, which we already explained in the previous form that I understand, so I'm not going to explain too much detail into that. I need to show how things connect to the body, and hopefully within the next 2 minutes draw something anatomically correct so that it shows that I understand the body more or less to a good extent. Boom, boom, boom. So, shoulder, bicep, tricep, boom, 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 boom. Elbow, little space between the bicep and the elbow. Forearm muscle that wraps around. Forearm, and then hand. If I make the hand facing this way, it could be, no, the thumb has to be towards the bicep. So the thumb has to be over here. And then fingers, whee. But the hands come later. So let's move down. Abs connect from the edge of the rib cage to the bottom of your crotch or the middle of your crotch. That is your ab line. Your legs consist of your thigh, upper thighs like a sushi, to your lower leg. Boo, boo, boo. Then you have your kneecap. Your kneecap is consistent of two muscles that kind of create like a diamond in the middle of your leg. Your upper thigh is going to overlap the bottom part of your leg, which is your calf that connects to the back of your knee, a little bit above the back of your knee. This creates your shin bone. Your calf wraps around your shin bone and the front. The front is where it's supposed to connect. And then you have your feet that can be like upside down ice cream cones that got cut. And you can just add depth to that and then create shoes and create toes if you want to. And then arms and bodies, they have rotations and then they go on the round. So if one shoulder's here, the other one's not floating, it's in the back right here. And then if you want to take things into perspective, you have to make them smaller as they get smaller, so you can actually be able to get all your poses and be able to understand them better. And then when you want to actually rotate them into space, you just have to think about basic shapes and then be able to put them there, and you can actually just do it. Okay, cool. All right, so done. So with that, I think I can demonstrate to a very basic extent my knowledge of the human body and how I actually am able to use it to my advantage. The reason that I ask for people to do this is, first of all, to understand if they know how to pose. So the reason why I ask people to do this is so that I can understand if people know how to move a character in space, right? If a person is constantly just drawing bodies like this, where it's nice and flat, even though it might be really cool, like maybe they changed like the body posture on top or whatever, right? Like something that's drawn on a flat surface demonstrates that a lack of creativity when it comes down to your posing. Whenever you see somebody that's doing this, normally it's because they don't feel comfortable enough to just move that line and create something a little bit better, right? The difference between that and that is somebody understanding the concept of a shape in perspective and somebody not understanding that. Therefore, only being able to do this. But this can also have shape by just slightly changing it. Just very slight changes in the curvature can give this like all the life in the world. And that slight difference is normally what separates somebody understanding a human body and somebody just drawing a body, right? Somebody can take a very basic shape like that, and then just with the knowledge that they have about body shapes, I can make this look like a character in a second. right? Even from behind and with a cape and all that stuff if I wanted to, right? That is imperative that you as a cartoonist or a designer, especially if you draw, understand the very basic concept of putting things in perspective, because that is very important. Understanding how to give your characters posing, like if you need to make something running, like how does a person run, right? Well, one leg goes forward, one leg goes back, and then they're floating in space. What happens to the arms? Well, one arm goes forward, one arm goes back. And that's normally the motions of somebody running. But how am I able to do this? This is just basic shapes, right? This is basic shapes combined with my understanding or where it's connecting to the human body. So me understanding where things connect is way, way more important than understanding how to draw like a perfect arm. I don't need to know how to draw a perfect arm, right? In order for me to just draw a cool arm, all I gotta do is know where the arm connects. If it connects at the collarbone, all I need to do is know that, and then I can draw anything coming out of there, and it's gonna look like an arm. Anything. I can draw anything coming out of that spot, and you're gonna associate it with an arm, regardless of it being super complex and like detailed, or a simple noodle. Because the understanding of the placement of it is infinitely more important than understanding how to actually draw it. Knowing where things pivot and how things overlap and stuff is the difference between somebody just attempting things and somebody actually understanding what they're drawing. So the next time that you are trying to assess yourself when it comes down to this and understanding of the actual basic concept of the human body, remember, it's not about getting the 8 heads tall figure. That's not a thing, right? Like I don't know any like professional person, artist that ever draws like that. Like I don't even think that's a thing. Like I never understood that. It was like one head and then one head down is like your rib cage, and then one head down is your, I think that's like the top of your hip, and then that, and then the next two is your thighs, and then the next part is your, right? It's something like that. Like that's the basic concept that like people like apply for like comic book characters and stuff like that. And people are dead set on actually copying these concepts. But just understand that there's 3 very important parts to the body, and everything else can change in shape, right? 1, you have your rib cage. 2, you have your hip bones. And 3, you have your head. All those concepts can change in size, modify in any way, shape, or form to create a variety of characters that are beyond like human understanding. Like taking that little mannequin, that very basic mannequin that we just draw super easy, right? That mannequin can be turned into absolutely anything you want with your understanding of basic shapes and anatomy. And that's it. That's all you need. Honestly, you could get a job anywhere you want if you master these skills. Like, your storytelling is going to be off the charts. You're going to be able to tell comics. You're going to be able to tell stories, write kids' books. You're going to be able to do animation, storyboards, so much easier if you just take the time to understand where things connect on your body and just focus on that. That and just learning your basic perspective so your posing is better. Okay? So if you just focus on that, that's it. Like that is the reason and the concept behind the third one, which is the human body. All right, so we have the human head, the human skull, the human body. So the next one is going to be a human, or just an eye in general, how to draw an eye. So let's separate this. And then we will put, let's do it here. How to draw an eye. All right, let's see if we can draw and learn how to draw an eye within 5 minutes. Excuse me for a second. Just gonna stretch my fingers out a little bit. So, I like to tell people, if you guys are learning anything from me, right? If you guys are learning anything from me, go subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to the YouTube channel. There's hundreds of videos like this on YouTube. Free, completely free, and they'll teach you a lot. So, if you guys go to YouTube, please, if you guys are going to go to YouTube and subscribe and help me out, click that little heart button. Let me know that you guys are willing to help me out because I'm helping you guys out. It takes like 10 seconds to go like sign up. All right, so let's do this. Let's reset the timer. How to draw an eye in 5 minutes. The eye is not going to take that long. The eye is actually a very easy part. So let's do this. How to draw an eye. So a lot of us, I'm not going to go into like a basic explanation as to how other people draw eyes. I'm just going to show you guys how I draw eyes. I normally start with a sphere. I don't think of a circle anymore, right? I don't think of circles unless it's like a design that calls for circles. I concentrate on thinking of all my eyes as spheres because the whole eyeball in general consists of a sphere, which is all your big white area around your head, about your eye. Then you have your little colored area or designy area, the middle part of your eye. And if you choose to have some highlights, then you have some highlights, right? The highlight doesn't always have to go inside. The highlight can go and be outside. The highlight doesn't have to always be that shape either. The highlight can be whatever shape the light is hitting. So if my light right here is a square, guess what shape my highlight's gonna be? Right? The shape that you draw here is that same shape in your highlight. So if you are just having a highlight for the eye, for like the sun, which is a little spherical shape, then guess what? What shape is your highlight gonna be? A little circle. Right? So what happens if there's multiple lights? Well, if there's multiple lights, then you have multiple highlights. Let's say we have one here and a square one here. Right? So your eye would have 2 highlights because 2 lights are hitting it. Right? So then let's go on to the next one. We have 3 minutes left. If you want to learn how to draw eyelids, easy, very easy. Take your eyeball, which is a sphere. So we have our little lines that go around like a hemisphere. And then just draw the upper one a little dark. Draw the lower one a little lighter. Ta-da! Oh, you want to know how to do it in profile? Cool. Do the same exact thing, but remember that your face is a little bit more. It's when you're drawing in like a 3/4 profile, remember that your eye socket is going to cover part of your eyeball. You're not going to see all your eyeball. So you're only going to see the front part, which is also two hemispheres going around. They crisscross. It goes around your sphere. Make the top one darker. Make the bottom one lighter. The top here is the eyelid already given to you because of the shape of your eyeball. And then the roundness of your eye socket is what gives you your eyebrow line. Your bottom eyelid is this little round shape. And normally this part is filled with collagen or with skin. So you normally don't see that part of the eye socket. And then you go into your cheekbones and your nose canal and stuff. But let's continue on to the eye because we're running out of time. The eye also has a little bit of depth when it comes down to your eyelids. So your eyelids have actual depth to them, right? It's kind of like a little tiny cover, like an eye shield. Your eyelashes come from outside of that. And your eyelashes normally follow the same roundness and that perspective that your eye is. So the first one will be here, and then it will just casually rotate around your eye, following these lines of perspective. A lot of the times people do the little cat eye thing, but that's a makeup thing, right? The bottom eyelid also has depth. It also wraps around your eye. And then the bottom eyelashes fall right on the outside edge. Then we add the little colored part, and we can change that to any design we want. It could be from an animal to an alien to something spotty to a cat. All those are different colors and designs. Just have fun with it. But understanding the basic concept of the eye being a sphere with two hemispheres creating the upper eyelid and the bottom eyelid is going to save you a lot of trouble down the line. And send. Boom. All right. Okay, so that was a fun one. That was actually pretty fun. Let's see. What else could I possibly have said about the eye? Just actually knowing these basic concepts of it, like knowing that the highlight is not like empirical to the eye. Like you can literally draw eyes with no highlights and it's perfectly fine. Like you can draw a ton of eyes with no highlight and it looks really cool still, right? Let's do some more like anime ones. You can draw a bunch of things without highlights and it'll be perfectly fine. Even like more complex ones, like, for pinups or whatever. You don't have to add a highlight to be able to get like a really cool design. But a lot of the times you get fixated on the highlights because they look cool and we like adding them, right? And so like we all want to do it. So whenever we don't like get to draw it, I see like even back angles for eyes are easier when you think about it, like I told you. Eyelid. It just becomes a lot easier to be able to draw complex shapes when you understand how they are made, right? If you understand how they connect and the parts around them and the depth and what it takes to see them and what it takes to actually like put one and one together, once you start seeing things like that, things are just going to naturally just become incredibly easy for you. Like it's not a like this is not like a cheat code that I like know from doing this for so long. No, this is literally the entryway. This is why everybody tells you to practice your anatomy and perspective. So it's so that you can do things like this, so that you don't have to guess where the other eye goes or how the other eye turns or how the eye, is supposed to be drawn. That is why you learn your perspective and your anatomy. It's not so you can draw buildings and draw vehicles. I don't want to draw landscapes. That's for architects. Yeah, you don't have to draw that stuff. But you got to learn all the anatomy and perspective so that you can do the things that you really want to do, which are your web comics, your anime, your manga, your stories, your kids books, your stuff like that. That is the stuff that you learn this shit for, right? You don't do that just I don't want to draw like that, so I'm just going to draw triangles because I don't want to take the single moment to understand that. Going around. Your eye is round. Your eye is not stylized, right? Your eye is not squares and squiggles. And even though that might look cool, if you don't understand the concept of this, the basic concept of the basic sphere is such an important concept to understand, because that's what helps you with your faces, right? That's what helps you understand how to rotate a face up, a face to the side, a face down. It doesn't have to be a complex shape to teach you. All you have to do is know how to move it like this, so that you can take that and then your knowledge of this, and then you take that and your knowledge of this, and then you put it all together, and then you come up with your own cool ways, even if it is a squiggle or anatomically correct. This is how you take a normal real thing, like an actual connection point and muscles, and then this is style, right? This is style. This is knowledge. That's the difference. You need knowledge to create a proper style. You can still do it without the knowledge, but then you have a cap. You're never going to progress past a certain point. So I like to tell people, please do what you can to start visualizing things as a stylized way of drawing. If you're drawing based on how somebody else draws, stop, because you're only hindering yourself, right? Even if it looks cool, that's going to be hard for you to progress because it's not your art style. That is not what you came up with. That is not something that you can explain yet. Unless you do see things like this, and then you're able to replicate the style because you're able to see things like this. If you're able to see things like this, you have progressed to the next level and you're able to do this professionally now. The moment that you're able to take even a simple shape like a beanbag, right? Like a beanbag. I talk about this all the time, but a basic beanbag. That, if you understand that shape completely, you can make this into anything. This could be a body, a monster, a face, a vehicle, name it. That can be absolutely anything. The whole world is made out of beanbags. Arms are beanbags, right? Regardless of the shape of them, big and bulky ones. That's just a beanbag. A leg is a beanbag. Okay, a toe is a beanbag. Everything can be a beanbag, even a face. Okay, a body, everything. So if you understand that basic shape, that is it. That's all you really need to understand in order to be able to progress to another level of understanding. So we did the human eye. How did you guys do? Let me know. How did you guys do? How are you guys liking this? If you guys are enjoying these sort of videos lately, the clothing one was actually really fun. Talking about how clothing folds and it melts and feels like it crumbles, and depending on the consistency of it and the texture and stuff like that, like how it changes and how it wraps around your body and stuff. This was really fun lesson. I really, really enjoyed this one. So if you guys are enjoying these sort of content and videos, like, please let me know. Like, if you guys are also enjoying me posting the little snippets onto my actual page, if you guys are enjoying those, hey, like, please feel free to like let me know by clicking the little share button. Hit the little share button and we can possibly get to like 1,000 viewers. Like, if even 20 of you, 30 of you hit that button right here, we can get to like 1,000 viewers. Like, no joke. We've gotten to like 64,000 before. That was amazing. So, okay, let's move on to the next one though. A four-legged animal with ears. So we just talked about animals a couple days ago, so that's going to be fun, right? We just talked about animals and how to like use their ears and stuff like that, and their snouts and all that stuff. So let's draw a four-legged animal with ears. And that will be number 5. So 5, skill set assessment test. Page 2. Okay, so look back. Okay, so this one's gonna be a four-legged animal with ears. Let's reset our clock. Where is it? Okay, so 5 minutes on the clock. Let's explain this topic. And you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Hit that little heart button. Show me you guys are ready, and then we'll start. All right, let's go. Let's do this. So, how would I explain that I know how to draw a four-legged animal? Well, I would probably just see if I can draw a few four-legged animals and see if they look accurate, right? I would consider things like different legs, like horses, right? Or maybe like little ears pointing in different directions. Or I would demonstrate that I know how to draw a face going into the distance. Or I would demonstrate that I can, I don't know, give a character wings or something. But that's four-legged animal. I guess technically it's still, yeah, I can give something wings if I want to. See, with animals, it's understanding of an animal is going to be based a lot on what you actually know about them, right? What if we made it into like a toucan? Like a griffin? Your understanding of how an animal moves, of how an animal's like body postures change, it's going to highly change the way that your drawing comes out. You can change all the features you want out of an animal, but just like, with your body parts that we drew, the more you understand the animal and the more you actually know about the anatomy of the animal, the easier it is to be able to actually draw the animal. And the more knowledge you have, the more you can play around with these concepts. You can play around with textures. You can play around with detail. You can make things completely different animals by just changing very slight details of it, right? Very slight details from similar traits can take something and make it a completely different animal very, very quickly. So the concept behind understanding animals, and especially four-legged animals, is understanding that their limbs are not very different than humans. Right? They still have a rib cage and they have hip bones. If you know where those elements come out, it's very easy to draw the elements you need. The same concept would apply to drawing a human doing those same things. Okay, so if you understand the concept of drawing a human being, the concept of drawing an animal is not very far away from that. Okay, so once you understand the actual human body, it's going to be very easy to transition that to very different animals. Be it like an elephant, something really large. Right? Or even something very, very small like a gazelle, or like anything that has really, really little limbs. You see what I mean? Like the concept of the rib cage and the concept of the hip bones applies to everything. So, we went over. Oh no, we went over. Hope you guys don't mind. Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I went over by 8 seconds. So forget the last 8 seconds of that lesson. Okay, well, we're not going to forget the lesson. That was actually what I believe to be a very important lesson. And let's make it a little bit more clear. So, understanding the concept behind the rib cage in general and the human anatomy, right? Human, animal. If you understand this concept, and then you start understanding how the bone structures for these things work, then you will actually be really, really well off, because you will be able to actually understand how things move a little bit better. This simplification of the bone structure, it's just a very simple way to be able to just see angles. Like, for example, on a feline, you have your big thigh, and then the bottom of your feet, which would be this part of your foot of a human, is very elongated. So it looks like a person's on their tippy toes. If a person was replicating that, it'd be like this. Right? So that is what a cat bottom foot looks like. So, boom, boom. See? Bam. So, tippy toes for cat feet. And other animals like that as well. Elephant feet and stuff like that are more just like stubby tree people, right? Boom, boom, boom. And then their toes are just really, really like big. No. Let's see, like a gazelle or an animal like a cow or like a goat or something like that. Their bottom of their feet have hoofs. Right? So hoofs are literally just little like cups, right? But the cup normally has like a little opening from the hoof. The hoof can change size from really large to really small. And that way of visualizing things like that can also help you with the animals that have very similar concepts, right? But they have more like outside ones, kind of like a camel or something like that. Visualizing things like this just helps you be able to do the slightly more complex ones when you're able to actually see that detail. So, understanding the very basic concept of how the human work will help you understand how other animals work as well. And the more you know how an animal works, let's like example, like a simple thing like a snake, right? Like this is such a hard concept for so many people to like grasp. Like I don't understand. Anybody that claims that they understand perspective should be able to draw a snake incredibly easy, right? If you have trouble drawing a snake, it's probably because you don't understand perspective very well. So let's think about what a snake is. A snake is literally just a cylinder that's twisting around in space. That's all a snake is. If you understand how a cylinder can rotate in space, you can infinitely draw a snake that goes infinitely everywhere. That's also the same concept behind drawing rope, right? If you're going to draw a rope, you just draw the outside edges and then you use your inside lines to create the perspective. That's how you would draw a dread as well, or a braid, or, let's draw like a braid. Right? That is just the same concept that you would apply. But for a snake, it would just mean that you have probably like a top and a bottom. So we have the bottom of the face right here. This kind of looks like the bottom part of the belly that would like kind of rotate around. This would be the top now. The top would start rotating again. That would be the bottom. And let's twist it around again right there. And then just like that. That was all it took to create a ton of depth within the drawing. And if I wanted to even go even further, I would just go in and create the actual differences here. Let's see, what's the top? Let's see. Yeah, something like that. Cool. And then you just, there you go. It just became a much, much cooler, like, snake-like thing just by understanding the very simple lines of perspective, right? So with that, what I ask for this is, honestly, it's not necessarily to know that the person is an expert at drawing animals, because a lot of these things that I drew are not exactly how an animal looks. These are incredibly simplified versions of things, right? But understanding that the person can draw more than just a very simplified cat, right? Or if I see them drawing things like this, simple, very things, and not actually showing that, or if they just go overly detailed. Like when people go overly detailed, it's very hard for them, like most, and it's normally very detailed and very stylized, right? That's normally the case. It's like super heavily detailed and super stylized. So it's very hard to determine if the person actually understands the shape that they're supposed to be drawing. as opposed to me just kind of guessing that they do because it looks cool. But at the same time, like, actually noticing that there's a bunch of like, things that just don't add up or they don't look up quite right. But I can't be like, that looks off because it's stylized. So it's just hard to assess that. Right. And in this case, we're assessing ourselves. Right. You are going and looking into what you're drawing, and then you are going to be judging yourself at home if you did something right or wrong. Like, I'm not going to be looking at this unless you guys share it with me. If you guys share it with me, I'll be more than happy to talk all over your guys' assessments. If you guys are okay with that, send them to me and send them to me on Instagram. If you guys are okay with me sharing a video of me like reviewing your assessment and telling you guys what you guys could improve on, how you could have changed the drawing slightly, and me just do a draw over, please feel free to send that to me. That would be a really cool video to make. Anyways, so with that, I think the knowledge of animals with ears is quite... I can say that I would have a general good understanding of that concept. So let's move on to the next one, which will be 5. A building. Cool. So I'll let you guys, while I reset the timer, I'm going to give you guys the chance to give me a theme for a building, right? The whole idea behind having fun with drawing and like perspective in like buildings and sceneries and stuff like that is to actually be able to put a lot of character traits into your buildings. Things don't have to always be completely like, like a building doesn't have to be a box. And then like, you don't have to draw the tops like that. And you don't have to draw like the windows like that, right? You don't have to do the whole perspective bullshit. Sorry about language, but you don't have to do the houses like this. Yeah, it's cute, and then if you like want to do like architectural stuff, fantastic. But you're not subjected to drawing things just like this. You have the ability to draw anything you want. Just think of your houses and your, like buildings and everything that you draw as if it was an actual character. So if I wanted to draw like the cute little house, but I didn't want to just go basic like this, how would I just draw a shape in that general idea, right? Just like, let's say I want that as a house. I don't know why, I want that as a house. So now, understanding that that's going to be a structure, I need to give this a floor, like a floor plan. So in what direction, I'm not even considering a perspective plane at this point, right? I'm just trying to give this a shape. So I'm going to give it the floor plan. And my floor plan is going to consist of a very, let's do a very basic shape like that. So now I know that this is the back of my house. This is the front of my house, or this could be the front of my house, or whatever I want. But this shape in general has to be my house. So if this line kind of goes like that, let's play around with that. Let's make that the top of the house. This kind of looks like the side. This one kind of looks like the front would be maybe like that, right? So now that we have a basic shape, let's start having fun with it. Let's just start adding stuff to it that we might like. So let's set a set for scale first. If we are going to make things to scale, we need to make sure that if this is, for example, if this was a big house, drawing somebody like this would literally make you think that this is a giant's home, right? But if I draw somebody like this, suddenly either that guy's a giant or the home is really small, right? I can just hide that by drawing some grass. The grass is huge, therefore making the house look small, right? But So that is very important when it comes down to drawing buildings. So you need to establish that something is to scale to something. So not taking this into consideration, let's draw, I don't know, some shrubbery, some flowers, and stuff like that. So let's set that as the basic ground shape for our scale. So that means that if shrubbery is like that, maybe we'd have like, I don't know, some pebble stones. We have maybe some more grass. Just some very little elements to go along with the perspective that we already drew our concept in. I'm not thinking of perspective planes. I'm not thinking of vanishing points. I'm just thinking of a very basic shape in perspective, right? In this focus and form, I'm literally just concentrating on drawing the front and the back of my shape, just like I would with a character, like a head, a body, or whatever. It's the same idea. And then to this, I'm just going to start adding stuff. I want a ceiling. So let's make a ceiling, but let's make a ceiling that comes off of our shape a little bit. So if it comes off of here, maybe we'll make it like a little canopy. And now we suddenly have a little canopy for our house. Connects to the floor, just at the bottom where the shape is. And then we just have a little canopy for our little thing. We have our little steps. And now we can play around and have some other shape right here, maybe like a little sign, right? Or maybe like a fence that goes like the distance. And then here on top, we already know that that's the top. It doesn't have to be like flat and like perfectly square. Like homes come in every shape and size. So you don't have to have a perfect square or a perfect circle. Like houses just are different. You know, as long as you have the perspective looking correctly, it won't matter if you have a very differently shaped home. Let's draw a little window. We will draw some depth to the window by darkening one little edge, maybe creating like a little thing, and maybe even some curtains and stuff. The amount of detail that you can add to a drawing is only going to be consistent with the amount of mental library images that you have accumulated. And let me explain that. The reason that I'm able to see probably a little bit deeper level of detail than a lot of people is because I have drawn doors, door hinges, houses, and everything else like that countless times. So a lot of the times, it just is easier for me to draw this stuff, right? Because I've just done it for so long. And the fact that I've been doing it for so long is just very consistent with the fact that I have a huge mental library. The mental library is just going to allow me to draw elements that I've seen in my life, that I've drawn, that I've spent doing, and be able to take that and apply that to anything that I draw. So I'm observant. I take my sketchbook everywhere, right? So I can learn more different ways to draw things that are going to just be really cool, and then just allow me to have fun creating anything I want, as opposed to being limited because I'm like either being like, oh, I'm just a character designer, I don't do buildings, I'm just a blah 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 blah, I don't want to do buildings because buildings are boring, because buildings suck, because I don't want to do perspective. You know, people that just have that mentality, like you're literally saying, I don't want to be a better artist, I don't want to understand, and I don't want to know because it's hard. right? That's essentially what people like that like are telling the world. And if you want to be one of those people, like, hey, fantastic. Like, hey, dude, like, like you don't have to be a certain way. No one likes a person that just like tells other people what to do either, Draw myself in the pen. The pencil. But just actually having an understanding of these concepts is so important. Like that just people just forget that basic anatomy and perspective are what like actually like get you places. Right? Like understanding those two things can get you in so many doors. And the moment that you like dismiss that, it's it's kind of like you're like shutting yourself out of your own job. Like that's essentially what's going on. Like whenever you are like actively just thinking about not doing something because it's hard, it's like, why are you even doing this work, man? Like, why do you want to like go into this field if you don't want to put the time in? Like I said, a house doesn't have to be anything with perspective at all. You just need to understand the concept of perspective, right? Understand how the shapes are built so that you can carve out, again, another beanbag. Just to show you guys like a perfect example of like how it can literally be anything. Let's make this top part a little bit bigger. We'll make it like a little mushroom head. Then that has its own perspective. And we can make a couple more branches coming out. And then we'll draw some spots. No. Let's see. That's some more plants. Yeah, like I said, like you don't have to have like perfect perspective for anything either. It just has to be a fun idea and understand, like, as long as you understand the concepts of where you're placing your elements, it's easy. And learning how to make buildings and stuff like that, even from this, it's very simple. Like, there's very simple exercises you guys can do, right? One that I really like trying out that you guys should try is cutting into basic shapes. So having your basic shape, and then once you divide it, cut little shapes out of your basic shape. Make a weird basic shape so you guys understand that it's not just like circles and spheres. You can like just cut out a little bit right there. Right? Learning how to cut the edges of your circles and your spheres is going to help you understand how legs work. Right? Understanding how to cut one of the sides is going to teach you how to cut the other side. And that's going to teach you how to draw a leg. So very basic exercises like these not only teach you how to draw buildings better, but they also teach you how to draw bodies better, heads better, eyes better, everything better. but it also is fun. Like, it's actually fun drawing like houses and stuff. It's just kind of sad that people put such a bad stigma on it. Like, they just like hate doing it because I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know why. Like, character design is cool, but building and set design is awesome. You get to like build a world, for God's sakes, right? So it's like, it's really really cool to be able to do prop design and like visual development. Oh shit! I never put a timer for that. Damn it. Okay, never mind. I guess we'll just consider this me understanding the knowledge of buildings. Damn it. Okay, which one was that one? Okay, let's go. That was 6. So, if you guys are just joining us right now, we are doing a skill assessment test. This skill assessment test is going to go on a 5-minute per topic basis. There's no erasing. Being messy is okay. Demonstrating an understanding of the topic, multiple drawings is okay. Ask yourself why each of these are important so that it can help you focus. So, what I mean by doing that is if I'm asking you to draw a human head, like we did here, I have to explain in 5 minutes why or how much of the human head I understand. So I explained rule of thirds, the placement, the angles, and even compared it to an actual simplified anatomy to show that I actually know an understanding of the human face. And then I explained to you guys why it's important to draw the human face like that and why perspective, anatomy, placement, style, and everything is making an actual like correlation to your understanding of that. And then I just did that for every single one of these things. So the next one up is going to be drawing a vehicle. All right. A vehicle. Let's start the clock one more time. So we have 5 minutes to draw a vehicle and explain that I can draw vehicles. And let's do this. Okay, start. All right. So vehicles are normally another thing that people get really annoyed at because it's hard for them to understand the concept of things in perspective, right? But the moment that you actually understand how things work in perspective, because you are literally just mapping things out against a grid, right? Like, that's all you're doing. Like, whenever you're drawing in perspective, you're just mapping things out in the grid. So things that are not necessarily like just squares, like motorcycles or anything like that, are so much fun to draw because you can just pinpoint one part to the other and then it just starts coming together. And since we did exercises about slicing elements out of elements, right? Like in this last part, like I'm showed you guys that one exercise is to slice things out of the other elements. That is essentially all you're going to be doing when you're drawing like these sort of drawings. You're going to carve out shapes, go from one side to the other, create more slightly complex concepts, and try to not do just flat, boring designs. And with a little bit of playing around, you end up with some pretty cool things. Right? And I'm just shaping all this out of the perspective points that I have. Just going back and forth, back and forth. And just like that, you can create something like a vehicle, like a motorcycle. If you wanted to create something a little bit different, let's say like, I don't know. And I really enjoy that angle for vehicles, by the way. If you wanted to create something like a car, I normally, like when I'm doing my basic shape, I separate the middle of the car from the wheels when I'm doing my divisions, right? So that's the width of the wheel. The reason that I like to draw the wheels first is because then it gives me all the other information that I need. So my other wheel would be, right? If I have where my wheels go, everything like the wheel wells and like the rear parts of it become a little bit easier to draw, because I just need to draw around these things. Right? I don't have to worry about where I'm going to put the tires and where I'm going to put like the front bumper and everything. No, the tires are already there, so I don't have to worry about that. All I got to worry about is just making sure that it looks organically like working. And that means like understanding again where mirrors, windows, window panels, stuff like that, where all that stuff would go, just like you would consider yourself like if you understood how a hip bone connects to a leg, right? This understanding of where this connects is the same kind of understanding that you need for a car. You need to understand where some things are just connected so that you can actually draw really cool things for them. And the more you understand, the better off, again, with anatomy. The more you understand anatomy, the more detail you can add. The same thing happens with cars and vehicles. The more you understand them, the more you'll be able to draw them more complex, more detailed, with cooler details and stuff like that. And ta-da! Time. So, let's see. Oh my God, my arm is dead. So, the reason that I ask people to give me an idea of their understanding of buildings and vehicles is to understand their ability to be more complex or more or like open thinking about basic perspective. Because if I see a person able to turn like a basic shape into a face, right? If they can turn that into a face and they understand how to split it in half and they understand all these concepts behind, like middle lines, half lines, and understanding where like curvatures are. If you understand this concept of this complex of a concept of actually mapping out the face, a building is no different. Literally, it could be an opening for a mouth. All you need to do for the eyes. And then just instead of having your jaw, just draw a basic shape on the ground. Your ears can be whatever you have on the side. It could be like a tree if you wanted. Your ear could literally be like the chimney or, anything else on the side. And then whatever hair would be the ceiling. So in this case, let's just keep it nice and simple. Right? Even the tongue could be like the entryway if you really wanted to like play off the concept of actually drawing a face as a house. So the concept is the same. The perspective, angles, everything is concepts are very similar into like very, very, very similar. Let's turn something like a basic face, right? Let's just draw a basic face. Let's see if we can turn that into a vehicle. Let's see. Let's take the basic perspective of the head. We're going to start subdividing this a little bit more. And yeah, I think I got this. We'll add a wheel. Gonna make this into going around. Make that the exhaust port. Then we will give it like handlebars. The other handlebar would go through here, maybe through here, to here, to here. This one would be a little longer. From here, I'm gonna be cool. I'm gonna give it spikes at the end of the, maybe a foot peg to be able to hold your foot, and maybe a shifter. From this side, you'd probably see the foot peg. The tires can have a little bit of a detail. Again, I'm able to draw these details because I understand and I've seen enough tires and changed tires and drawn tires enough to me to actually be able to simplify this. Very similar to the concept of actually somebody knowing how to draw an eye really well, right? Somebody knowing how to draw an eye really, really good, and then just simplifying it to the point where they're like this. That is the same concept of me taking a tire that I've drawn in detail before, understanding the pattern, and then changing that to a very simplified version of it, akin of this, and then just making that into that. We'll make like a headlamp. Some brackets to connect it. That'll be like a grid, and I'll shoot. Then maybe it needs a display panel. So let's draw a little fender in front of our handlebars. And it's gonna need a seat, so let's draw a seat on top right here. We'll have to cut into the shape to bring a little seat in the back. We'll make it like a cafe racer. And then back here, you'd probably have like a little thing for the license plate and some turn signals. From here, the engine's probably gonna be here, but this is probably where you would have like a logo or something like that. So we'll just add a little heart. Fender would bend right there. And yeah, we'd have like little lights or turn signals here. So mirrors. So we'll draw a mirror there and a mirror there. Cool, see? Yay! We took a basic shape and created a cool little vehicle from nothing. Just because we have fun and we understand the concept that we're talking about. So I have a motorcycle and I'm kind of obsessed with motorcycles right now. So I can actually visualize everything in my head that consists of a motorcycle. So I'm able to just replicate that incredibly easy. But, you know, if you're not familiar or knowledgeable about a certain vehicle, it's going to be hard for you to be excited about drawing a vehicle. It's going to be hard but if you were really excited about drawing birds, let's say you really like birds, like you really, really like birds, right? And you're like obsessed with birds and you like love them and you're like crazy about them. Take a loose sketch of a bird and see if you can turn it into like, I don't know, a vehicle. See if you can do that. And then just have fun with it. Let's see. Let's try to make it into a vehicle. I don't want to go with the same uni-wheel concept. But in this case, I kind of like the concept of having a shape like this. You can have it split in half. Look at the power of doing the ability to see these shapes. Like, the versatility that you have is insane. Like, you can literally just start sculpting elements out of concepts, and just once you figure out that basic shape, that's all you really need. Everything else is just gonna be a piece of cake. Like, honestly, I think the hard part about being an artist is being able to understand that it's this these basic concepts of perspective and anatomy are the ones that get you like to where you need to be. But people just skip over these, hoping that just drawing cool is going to get them places. We're gonna make an Atmobile. Ants have a big butt. It'll be like an exterminator, like mobile. You know, like the super like always like super tacky ones, like the Oscar Mayer Wiener mobile. And then he's gonna need leggies and eyes. That looks like a termite though. It doesn't look like an ant. But whatever. um, and the door would be like right here probably. And that would be like a facade for like a big windshield. Anyways. You guys get an idea. But where do you start thinking like that though? Like how can you improve and start visualizing this? It's actually relatively easy. Like, go back to a basic understanding of your shapes, right? Like, I want you to start going in this direction, and I want you to stop whenever you actually get to the point where you don't understand it anymore. Okay? I want you to start with a circle. Cool. I want you to take that circle and I want you to split it in two. I want you to take that circle and I want you to split it in two, but I want you to split this shape with depth. So in this case, I want you to find the front and the back. Right? We're not longer seeing this as not a circle anymore. This is a circle. This is a circle. This is a sphere. The moment that we start identifying something as a sphere with just line work, not with shadows, right? And not with line width. No. The moment that you start identifying it with shape is the moment that you're able to divide a sphere properly and accurately in any direction you need to, and also in any sort of hemisphere direction that you need to. They don't always have to crisscross. They don't always have to disconnect. Being able to divide your shape in multiple ways is very crucial. Okay? Because doing this is your roadmap to all your detail. Understanding this concept is what allows you to map out faces really easy. Mapping things like this is what allows you to draw details in perspective. Okay. Doing things like this is what allows you to be able to draw through your shape to be able to find the front and the back of elements for, let's say, your shoulders, right? Your arms, rib cage, necks, the head. You know, understanding those concepts helps you be able to see things like hats, ears, the jaw a little bit better. Okay, so things like that, this is the reason that we learn how to just simplify a basic sphere, right? This is all the reason why. If you don't understand how to do this, it's going to be very hard for you to understand how to map out details. Once you understand this, you start going into slightly more detailed things. You start going into bending the shape in different ways. That basic circle, when you start learning how to bend it in different shapes, you learn to change the direction of the shape with creases. The moment that you can literally change the entire shape by just creating different lines, and you feel comfortable doing that, right? The moment that you understand this, just making it a little bit longer one time and slowly molding it will help you learn how to map these shapes out in every perspective. Exercises like these are very important so that you are comfortable drawing your shapes. All these things can easily turn into faces, right? They can turn into heads. They can turn into body parts. It's a sassy one. I need to draw the arm. That just came out perfect. Anyways, you guys get an understanding of how a basic shape, just slightly twisted, can turn into a bunch of different things. This could be a rib cage, hip bones, turning into, again, an entire body system if you needed to. But a very basic shape like that can get you really far. So the more you're able to bend that basic shape into more complex fashions, that's how you start getting things like this. And what is that? That's literally just a head shape. A little bit more detailed head shape, right? But it's still just this basic concept of this shape just changed a little bit. Just a little bit more. But it's that same concept of a beanbag. Look at this. Okay? It's just a beanbag, and then you just add your knowledge of anatomy to create the things you want. That is why anatomy and perspective are so crucial and important. That's why so many of your teachers stress to you, please don't draw an anime shape. Don't draw an anime. Don't draw in your manga style. You know why they tell you that? It's not because they hate anime or whatever, you know? It's because if you are so set on drawing anime, you're going to be stuck on just drawing somebody else's stylization of an eye, right? You're going to be stuck drawing your eyes a certain way instead of actually understanding the concept of the eye and how you can just stylize any eye in any way just by understanding the concept of how it's built. And then understanding this allows you to take that same concept and change any facial feature you want to anything you want. Oh no, the enemy has shown up. Oh, we want the eye closed. Okay, cool. Why can I draw this so quickly like that? Because I understand the concept behind this. This is all just a sphere with different hemispheres and styles applied. Right? I can even give you where the placement for the eyebrows, because that's at the top of the eyeball. So all my eyebrows, I already know where they go, because I have knowledge of anatomy. And I have knowledge of perspective. So it's not hard once you actually understand your foundations. All right, let's go back to the other drawings that we did. So even these, like you see just like a little like shape, right? But in my eyes, I'm seeing all these shapes like this. I'm seeing this. I'm not seeing that basic shape. I'm seeing all these basic things that I draw. All of them have perspective. All of them have shape. Nothing is just a line. Everything has depth. Everything. Even this dude. Right? Especially that dude. That dude has all the depth. Look at that. Look at that. Ooh, even deeper. More depth. The bottom of his foot. Ah, look at the depth. Oh, we're gonna add more depth. We're gonna give him a tail in the distance. Right? Like, it's... Perspective is such an important thing, and so many people dismiss it. Like, people think it's boring. Right? But just without knowing a very... Like, I'm not talking about the perspective with value, like with vanishing points and shit. That's not the what perspective that you need. You just need to know how to subdivide something and know how to place it into a shape and perspective. Yes, you need that for this to be able to like map it into an actual scene and stuff. Right? If I wanted a scene, then I need perspective points and vanishing blah. But just to create characters, you don't. You can create your character and then create your scene around them. Like, it doesn't have to be the other way around. You don't have to build a scene and then create the characters. No, I can draw my character in any way I want. Right? And then based on very basic shapes like my shoes or my feet, I can determine the perspective of the scene. And then at that point, I can create my vanishing points, and then I can create everything I want for my scene. Right? But at the very beginning, I don't need to do that. Da, 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 da. And I think my enemy would have an earring. And the cool hat. Yeah, he would have a cool hat. Yeah. And cool boots. He would have cool boots. There you go. So a scene can be built around your characters. You don't have to build your scene and then your characters. I just always never liked that. Like, I was never really good at environments when I was starting out, right? But I was decent at drawing fun characters. So I always just approached it like this, and it just worked just fine. Okay, let's see. What is the next one? A scene with a foreground, a middle ground, and the background. Well, let's see. Now we have a foreground. We don't have a foreground yet. I just unwittingly just drew it. Like, how funny is that? I totally forgot. Like, I was honestly not trying to skip it. It just progresses, like the way that I like to teach it. It's like it just progresses one naturally to the other. So hopefully some of you guys are actually following along, and you guys can actually benefit from learning all this stuff. Some more trees in the background. Okay. Then we don't have a foreground yet. This is the middle ground. Most of the detail that ever happens in a scene is in the middle ground. So if this was an actual scene, it would be something like that. Probably expand it out a little bit more over here. Right? Let's draw a little bit of... So my foreground is going to be anything that is essentially blocking the camera. So if I wanted to add a foreground that was really, really prominent, I would probably draw something like, I don't know, like a tree branch, really, really dark. Imagine that this is blocking the camera's view. Right? It's so big that it exits through the thing, and it actually creates elements that maybe even block other elements in the scene. This can be in the shape of brushes, trees, hands. If you want to be really creepy and just imagine a hand pointing in that direction. Right? Any element that's going to be dark and in the front is going to be assumed to be blocking the camera in some way. So therefore, it's going to create an element that looks like a foreground element. Anything that's in the back, especially if it's fading into white, is going to be seen as hazy and in the background. So I can draw little tiny mountains if I wanted to, and they'll look like mountains in the background. But yeah, that's just a very basic concept of a scene. Foreground, middleman, and background. Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you. All right. That was number 8. What's left? Number 9. A few hands in different positions. So the reason that I asked for hands in different positions is because the hand is probably the more complex part of the actual human body. The hand is an absolutely monster of a part to draw. The thing is, it's a very fluid thing. It's like our tentacles, right? This is literally our tentacles when it comes down to like comparing it to a human, like an animal. Like these are little 10 tentacles that you have, and they all have slightly different movement and range from left to right, and the big cone. Look at the big cone of movement that you have. So knowing how those cones interact with each other is freaking insane, right? Like thinking that they're always going to align a certain way is literally not the way that hands work. Hands mold, hands shape, hands have to grip different things that are different sizes. So whenever you grab something, everything is going to be different. Depending on the weight of it, you're going to need to grab something from underneath. If you need to grab something from the top, if you need to grab something from the side. So you need to understand that your hand is a very fluid shape. So you got to stop thinking about it like a box, right? Like that is literally the last thing you should think about when you think about hands. Stop thinking about like boxes. Just don't. Hands. Okay, and this was a scene. Cool. Okay, so let's learn how to draw hands in 5 minutes. Timer. Timer on. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys the easiest way that I found to draw hands. Because the hand shape is so fluid, you need to be able to know that it can actually be any shape you want, right? You just need to, again, understand where things fall, where things go is much more important than knowing exactly where they are, like how they're drawn. But just for shits and gigglies, I'm going to draw a bunch of different hands in different shapes, okay? The only thing you need to understand when it comes down to hands to start them is to know where your wrist connects to your palm. In this case, I'm going to do it from the top. The middle of your wrist is going to be perfectly aligned with the middle of your knuckle. Your middle knuckle is going to be the absolute key here, okay? From there, draw down your shape onto your middle knuckle. In any shape you draw, regardless of the perspective, draw to your middle knuckle inside of your palm. We can do this this way, I guess. It doesn't even have to be in the middle, but let's draw it. To one side of your middle knuckle, you have one knuckle. To your thumb side. So you have two technically to each side, but to this side, you're going to have one knuckle. So to the thumb side, I'm going to have one knuckle, and I can place it relatively close in position, and I can change the position if I want. I can have it closer, I can have it farther. In this case, I'm going to make it super far. In this case, I'm going to make it like it retracted a little bit. Right? So you guys understand it just has to be connected to the palm. To this side, we have two knuckles, just a little bit smaller ones. 1, 2. 1. This has to be connected to the palm. This is still connected by the edge, but it's still connected, okay? 2. 1, 2. So now we have all our knuckles. And then I'm going to give you the biggest tip that I ever got from just looking at my own freaking hand. Your knuckle is the width of your hand. However wide your knuckle is, that is the width of your hand. So if you're looking at this from the side and you're wondering how thick your hand is only as thick as your knuckle. Your knuckle on the top, your knuckle in the back. This little patty part, that's your knuckle line. That's your knuckles. Look at how it's right there. Boom, boom, boom. This is your little round bone. So that's your knuckle. So your knuckle is going to dictate the width of your hand. It's that easy. Your knuckle is going to dictate how wide your fingers go. And then it's just basic perspective, guys. Like, you can draw your fingers doing anything you want. Remember, it's just basic. It can be noodles. It can be whatever you want. Just understand that there's supposed to be perspective to them. Right? It doesn't have to be a bone structure. It doesn't have to be the anatomically correct, like, bone structure to be able to be an accurately drawn hand, right? So being able to understand where things come from and how they're placed is more important than what? Come on, let me know in the chat. What's more important? Knowing where where things go, where things are placed, where things connect. That is more important than knowing how to actually draw the shape. Knowing that, you can draw anything and then make that look like it's supposed to fit there, because you know where it's supposed to connect, right? That is essentially the basic premise of caricatures. Knowing how, that's it. Boom. So I hope you guys understand that the fact that the hand is incredibly fluid, but hopefully these little tips help you guys out. Any shape, middle knuckle, and then the knuckle determines the top and the bottom of our hand, right, already. So it's already there. And then from there, whatever shape you want for your fingers, you can just draw it out. You want animal hands? It's the same concept. Only the fingers are a little bit nubbier. But it's the same concept for animals. Okay? Find the middle knuckle. And then 1, 2. Boom, boom, boom. And then our thumb. Yeah, but also understand that you can curve your hand, you can curve your fingers, and then have like any hand shape you want. It doesn't have to stand like a little palm open or closed. You can draw your hands. Oh, there's more space here. You can draw your hands in a very fluid way, right? As long as you find your middle knuckle, you know the bottom and the top of your hand. And then you just find the one knuckle to one side, 2 knuckles to the other, and then start drawing your fingers as you would draw something that starts, whatever's going to block the other ones first. So if this one's pointing out the farthest, this is the finger that I would draw first. Then this one would be tucked underneath, so I would draw that one second. These have shapes, right? This one would be next, so that would be my middle knuckle. So what is my middle finger going to be doing? Whatever it's going to be doing. Maybe this other finger is, I don't know. There's still one here, so let's draw one more over here. And then our thumb, I don't know, maybe it's grabbing things over here. We have like a drawing. I don't know, maybe he's eating sushi or something. Right? So, understanding very basic perspective and understanding where things connect is going to be able to give you the ability to draw things that are more complicated like this. And even simpler, cartoony hands are the easiest thing in the world. Like Mickey hands and stuff like that. That is going to be, pardon the term, but stupidly easy. Right? So just learn my method. Go watch my video on 100 hands. There's one video I did that like is a 100 hands video. So that's not a hand. All right, hold on. Hold on. All right, let's draw some hands for other people because this is actually a good topic, anyways. So a hand, a normal hand, is going to have your fingers and your knuckles, and you're gonna have the little padding on your palm, and then you're gonna have your thumb that goes into your bone and it goes into your digit. Then you're gonna have your digits that go, if you know how to measure them, it's really easy. You measure the middle of your palm, and then you measure that against the initial part of your knuckle. Remember, your knuckle's inside your palm. It's not outside your palm. So if you're measuring from here, that's wrong. Measure it from inside, where your knuckle ends. Middle of your palm from your knuckle, that is going to be your first segment of your finger. The second part is going to be this same distance split in two. So this distance split in two is going to be your last two digits. Okay? This part, always separate your thumb from the rest of your hand. Your thumb moves a lot. You can hide it. You can straight up hide it. So that's why it's easy for you to just draw this part, right? The thumb in itself can be hidden. You don't even have to see it sometimes. So the thumb, just think of it like a hook. It's just a hook that comes from the side, right? It has two parts. Well, technically three if you count this part. So 1, 2, 3. So a thumb consists of three parts. It consists of a part that moves a lot, a part that doesn't move much, and then we have our digit that rotates over this part that does not move much, right? So this part can move up and down and left and right and like far apart and like super far. The thumb as well can move up and down and stuff. So there's parts that move and parts that don't move. That's how you draw your thumb. That's how you find the length of your fingers. All right? Your fingers don't have a line in between them. They have two lines. Look at that. They have two lines. Two lines on the bottom, two lines in the middle, two lines at the top. So don't draw one line, draw two lines. If you're looking at this from the top, same concept, but I'm going to hide the nail. So I'm going to have to draw another finger right here from the top. So split in two, top two. Cool. The nail wraps around your finger. You literally have them right there as reference. Like, I don't understand how people don't understand that they have the best reference right in front of their faces. Like, you can just spend a day just drawing your knuckles, drawing the folds of your hand, and you would understand a little bit more about how all your elements work, right? But like, people just don't do this. Like, I don't understand. Like, you have it right there, like right here. Unless you don't have a hand. If you don't have a hand, I'm sorry. If you're bending your fingers, they're okay. Your hand, you have your hand, right? That's your hand. You're pivoting your fingers right here, your knuckles. Whenever you're pivoting your knuckles, they are pivoting and folding from the knuckle line, not from the edge of the hand. It's from the knuckle line. So what happens with all this middle part? Obviously, it creases, right? If the more you bend it, the more you get creases. What happens when you take like a cone and you bend it 3 times? Or a sphere? What happens with this shape when you have to bend it once, right? If you bend a cylinder once, this is the shape you get. If you bend the cylinder twice, this is the shape you get. Your basic shape knowledge is what's going to help you position your fingers properly. Because if you just rotate the lines the wrong way, like here, instead of rotating them right, like here, you can change the whole dynamic of the drawing, right? If you don't draw the right lines for like the wrist, for example, here, if I don't draw them like this, if I draw them like this, that just changed the whole dynamic of the hand. Now it looks like the wrist is like bending in this point, right? It's creating like a crease or something. They're bending the hand, like breaking it. So your fingers are just cylinders, right? But adding your knowledge of anatomy on top, the knowledge of what we just traced right now. I know that my knuckle has these little lines. Cool. I know that this part is going to just blend in. And then I see that my knuckle is inside, kind of like a little pyramid. You know, it's kind of like a little pyramid. Right? So there's a little pyramid at the top of my finger. And that's my knuckle. Cool. Top and bottom. It kind of also resembles like a tree trunk, right? Like an elephant trunk. Same concept. Oh, that same concept of bending something around, if you just follow it around the whole way, it becomes a tire. And then that tire can become a vehicle. And that tire can do like whatever you want. Like, see what I mean? Like, the knowledge of you understanding a very basic concept like this applies to your anatomy, but it also applies to your basic just understanding of drawing. So you can take that and then make that into anything. You can make that into a leg that's bent, you know, like it can be an arm, it could be anything. The concept of just bending a cylinder is very strong. It's very powerful. It's the same like basic idea of having a beanbag, right? A beanbag can also be a finger. Beanbags can be all your fingers. Because it doesn't, like, it's just understanding the basic shape and perspective. This could be a beanbag. This could be a box. This could be whatever shape I decide that I want to give it. Whatever is easier for me to understand is going to be the best solution for me. Sometimes it's just drawing loosely, you know? It's like drawing really loose until you find those lines. And then when you find them, then you refine them and you draw your shapes. Sometimes a lot of people, you know, draw their basic structure, their angles that they want, and then they come up with a perspective afterwards. And that's perfectly fine as well. Some people see it more like a silhouette, right? They see the shape that they want, and then they add in the details according to the space within the silhouette. So there's a million different ways that you can approach it. Yeah, the point list, I'll show you guys in a second. This was the final one. So the reason that I like to explain, or I ask people to teach me or to tell me how they draw hands, is because I like to understand if they actually see complex shapes to this extent, right? Most people will be relegated to drawing hands in just a very handful of ways. Like they'll know how to draw fists very easily because it's a box. They will relegate themselves to drawing in the forward positions. They will relegate themselves to hiding their hands in their characters, right? They'll be like, or hiding them in the jackets. That is a huge, clear telltale sign that the person does not know how to draw hands. If a person is very using a lot of foreshortening, let's say that the person has like a superhero guy, and all they do is always draw the hands in the same fist position at the front and then try to like hide the one in the back by making a little tiny one or whatever. I see a bunch of artists do that. That's a clear sign that you don't understand what you're drawing. and I judge you for it. No, I don't. I would never do it. I would never judge anyone for anything. But that is an understanding like point that it's like sometimes when you draw hands in a certain style, right? And that is the only way that you draw hands, it's going to, it's going to hurt you in the long run because you're going to have to draw hands in different ways sometimes. You're not going to be able to draw hands in the same position all the time. Sometimes you need to change them up and you need to be able to understand how to draw these hands in different positions to be able to, have like really fun, like ideas. Right. So understanding hands teaches me your way of visualizing a very complex shape. If you are able to draw them in perspective, in the distance, going in, going out, moving around, I understand that you can visualize this a little bit. It's not always the easiest, and this is something that, a lot of people don't know how to do yet. It takes a while to be able to visualize things like this. But if people do get to this point and they are able to actually do that, it shows me like the level of progression that they have or the capacity for them to grow really, really quickly. Because this is essentially, if you're able to visualize a very conceptualized shape like this and actually move it comfortably, you are ready to do professional level artwork. If you are able to actually see a hand and know the difference between drawing something like this and drawing something like that, right? And understanding that these are essentially the same exact thing, then you are ready to move on to doing anything you really want. Okay, so let's go back and review our lesson for today because this was a very extensive one. And this is going to be an awesome YouTube video as well. So let's see. Today, we went about doing a skill assessment test. This skill assessment test consisted of creating drawings within a 5-minute period per topic. There was no erasing, and just being messy is okay. Demonstrating an understanding of the topic is the point of the exercise, so multiple drawings are perfectly okay. Ask yourself why each of these topics are important so that you can focus on the actual theme. So we went over and we drew the first one, the human head. Why do we actually need to know how the human head is? Well, understanding the human head to the extent of simplification, not saying that you need to know like hyper realistic stuff. As long as I know that you understand the placement, the spacing, the different ways to modify it, the parts that consist of it based on your anatomical structure, how to move around, create facial like adaptations of it. That is a basic understanding of a human head. this is going to be different for different people because different people have different focuses on different elements. So you don't always have the same idea of a head or what you want to create. But understanding the basic elements of a head from a side, profile, and 3/4, and how those basic shapes are consistent with perspective is going to be an absolute necessity when it comes down to you being a character designer, a storyboard artist, an animator, or anything like that. So that is the reason why. It also tells me a lot of your spatial awareness when it comes down to just basic spheres and stuff like that. Because people that have a hard time doing that have a hard time drawing angles that are not just necessarily flat, right? They have a hard time like not drawing angles that are like not looking up, looking down. They'll just draw perfectly profile, perfectly front, perfectly side. So that teaches me a lot of the person's ability to draw. So that is the first thing that I like to ask people. The second one is going to be how to draw a human skull. So we talked about how to draw a human skull. The human skull is going to consist of a couple different elements that is a very complex shape. But it's not for me to tell you to draw perfectly anatomically correct. No, I want you guys to just know the very basic elements of a head in the basic skull, because these elements are what provide the little bumps and the little angles that happen in your drawings. And that's going to have to be your eye sockets, which give you your cheekbones, and it gives you your eyebrow line, right? Your nose canal, and then where your teeth and your jaw goes. Those elements, if you understand those, at that point you can just modify them and just implement them into a basic shape. Let's do it on this guy. Eye sockets, cheekbones, into the mouth. And just like that, I can start carving out an entire character that's going to look anatomically correct. And I'm going to know where all the elements go because of it. Right? So understanding that lets you do that in different perspectives. Nothing is stopping you from being able to map out a character in a different position, because now you just know that it's supposed to be a shape within a shape. Right? So, okay, next one. That's the reason why we learn anatomy, so that we can actually map out things correctly, right? So that's the reason that I asked people to draw human skull, to see if they know anatomy in general. Then I asked for people to draw human body. So the human body, to me, is consistent of two very basic hard surfaces: your rib cage and your hip bones. And if you understand those two concepts and how they mesh with each other, and why it's important is because these all have the placement of your appendages mapped out into them, right? If you know where one appendage comes out from, right? If you know that my arm comes out from here, from your shoulder, I can draw a skinny arm or I can draw a buff arm. Doesn't matter what type of arm I draw, because I know it's just going to have to connect right there, right? Same thing with the legs. I can draw a skinny leg that connects to my hip bones, or I can draw a voluptuous leg that comes out from my hip bones. Or I can even draw something with bigger hip bones if I just draw the hip bones out, right? It is irrelevant what you draw as long as it's coming out of the right place. So drawing a human body is, and you showing me a human body and showing me movement, like if somebody just showed me like one of those, like, what is it, like the Da Vinci ones, right? Where the character is doing this, like that would teach me, give me so much more knowledge about a person's ability to draw a body than it would be like them drawing really cool poses or whatever. But being able to actually see the human body and map it out is going to give you the ability to draw it in multiple ways, just like we did the skulls. just knowing where things connect and where they go is very important. So knowing where something connects gives you the ability to draw it in any way you want. Okay? And it's going to look right because it's connecting to the right place. No, Da Vinci, I mean, Da Vinci wasn't doing animation or character design, dude. Like, so the guy was like engineering like future inventions. Like, that guy was doing way more than I will ever be doing. The next one is a human eye, or not an eye, just an eye in general. So, the lesson behind the eye. Essentially, the concept of the eye is just understanding that it's a basic sphere, right? The basic concept of a sphere is going to be consistent with an eyeball. Knowing that it's a round shape and then that little eye part just rotates around with the hemispheres. I was talking a little bit about how the highlights work and how the highlight is essentially the shape and it comes from exactly the direction of the light. So if your eye has, I don't know, a circular light and a square light, it's going to create two highlights, a circular highlight and a square highlight. We talked about the fact that you don't need highlights and how just to see it in 3/4 and all that nonsense, it's just as easy as drawing your sphere, drawing intersecting hemispheres, and then making the top one dark. And then you have an eye, like a perfectly shaped eye. And that's going to be the same case for any direction that you draw it. If you draw it from the bottom, if you draw it from the top, you're going to always have proper shape for your eyes. All right, so let's see. The next one was a four-legged animal with ears. So we talked a little bit about a four-legged animal, and I just explained how an animal and a human have very similar structures. I have a feeling I need to highlight something here. Yeah, I need to highlight the rib cage. Where's this one? So the rib cage in general is very similar when it comes down to most animals. So knowing and understanding a human body is going to give you a very good insight into how to draw an animal. Also, knowing how your legs and everything work is going to give you very cool insight into how that translates into an animal drawing, how different like animals' feet and stuff like that work, and how their bones just bend differently sometimes. And then some that are like snakes and stuff like that is more so a matter of understanding perspective than it is about knowing the animal structure, because it's just a simple rope. The reason that I ask people to know how to draw an animal is mostly just to understand how they take the same basic concepts from like an animal and a human and how they adapt it to different textures and different like positions. Because this is a very basic concept. You can just draw a human doing exactly the same thing an animal would. Like this is an arm. So you can have an animal or a human and have very similar traits. It's just a matter of what type of details you give it at the end of the day. Okay. So, but understanding the basic concept of it is very important because it just shows me how versatile you can be with your thought process. If you can visualize something as a human or as an animal, it also provides a lot of insight as to how creative you are. So I'd like to give that as a test. The next one was how to draw a building. The building. Well, the building one was fun because, understanding that a building doesn't have to be just a 1 point perspective thing, right? It doesn't have to be this. Right. The reason that you learn perspective and how to draw buildings is not so you can draw this. It's so you can draw cool like shapes that look like houses, and it doesn't have to be necessarily something little. Like if you have the ability to visualize things, you can do something like a cool tree house or something. I don't know. No, doing things that are like out of the norm and actually fun when it comes down to doing buildings and vehicles. This is the next one. The next one was vehicles. But understanding that they don't have to be boring, right? Like when you draw a car, they don't have to be like just boxes. They can be anything you want. As long as you, again, know where things go, everything falls into place correctly. Everything looks like a concept when you know where things are supposed to go. The trick is understanding where those things are supposed to go. Let's give it rocket. If you understand a little bit more about where things go on a vehicle, it's a little bit less daunting to draw really fun, silly shapes and then make those into what you need the vehicle to be. But the reason that normally people get intimidated by this, like, concept of drawing vehicles is because people don't know and they don't take the time to learn what the vehicle is supposed to do, what they're supposed to be drawing. Like houses and stuff like that are annoying for people because they don't want to take the time to sit down and draw houses. They don't want to sit down and draw roads. They don't want to sit down and draw plants. They don't want to sit down and do any of that. Well, that's very necessary if you want to ever be able to be a prop designer or a character designer in general, because you're going to be asked to draw things that aren't always just characters. And if you can't do that, you're going to be, like limiting yourself completely to like just drawing one thing and being known for that one thing. And, like as good as people are, the things they do, you want to be as versatile as you can be. Like you never want to just like be known for one thing. Like you want to be able to be known for a lot of things. It's perspective, right? Yay! But yeah, that's the reasoning behind building a vehicle and making a building. It's to understand how you apply that same concept of perspective to different things. If you're versatile, you're going to be able to take the same knowledge that you approach buildings wise, you're going to approach heads wise, you're going to approach that into vehicles and other things with perspective. It's not going to be just relegated to buildings. If you can make like if you can make something like a leg with perspective, that's really, really complex, right? Why can't that be like a tree branch? You can use your shapes and the knowledge of what you already know to create really fun, different things. It's just a matter of taking that concept and applying a different idea of perspective to it. All right. The next one was. Now, then we talked about the roadmap. Like if you're testing yourself knowledge wise and you don't understand some of these things, look at this and tell me where you stop understanding it. Start with the circle. Move on to splitting the circle in half. Then make it into a sphere by splitting that in half. Use that to understand how to divide your shape in many different ways. Not with shadows, not with line work, not with like line width. These are no's. Don't add shadows. No shadows. Show me depth without shadows, right? If you understand the shape, then you can understand how to make it depth. If you can only do it with shadows, then you don't understand the shape. You understand how to shade something to look like the shape. But if you understand how to shade, you can just reverse engineer that. So let's say that you have that, right? And that's where your shadows go. Well, you already know where all your perspective lines go because you already have it divided, right? If you know how to shade, you retroactively already know how to do that. If you know how to shade really good, like let's say you have a light source here, right? And you have like your shadows and stuff, and your core shadows and your reflective light and all that stuff. Say you have that, you already have all your grid, it's just differently gridded. Right? You already have it there. It's already mapped out with your shadows. But just focus on learning to do it like this so that you can map it out and you can use those guidelines to be able to draw your things a little bit more precise. Right? A floating object. Okay, cool. We'll draw a floating object with 2 lines. There you go. You can't unsee what? With smoke. A floating object with smoke. Whee! Okay, so I think that is going to be it for our. Oh, and then we talked. No. We talked about a scene with a middle ground, a foreground, and a background. So in this case, I decided to show you guys how to make a foreground by creating a dark silhouette of shapes. The middle ground tends to be where your action is going to be situated, and the background is more so anything in the back, so I can make some like darker shapes as well. But this kind of demonstrates a foreground, middle ground, and background just by contrast. Cool. And then the last thing was to show hands and draw hands in several different ways. So I showed you guys a couple different really simple ways to learn how to draw the hand. And I talked you guys through every single thing you really need to understand to be able to make your hands look a little bit better and understand it a little bit better. So with that being said, I think this video was long as freaking hell. So I'm gonna go and I'm going to go eat some dinner because I have not eaten yet. I'm gonna eat some chicken wings and I'm gonna devour those things, and then I'm gonna come back here and I'm going to download this video and I'm gonna upload it to YouTube for all of you guys to be able to see it. So you guys have a fantastic night. Love every single one of you. We had 31.2 thousand likes. Holy shit. But we only had 132 shares. So, Rod, we did not meet today's quota for shares, unfortunately. But we will get another chance tomorrow. If you guys feel like you guys want to join in, I will be streaming early in the day. And if you guys feel like supporting, I do have books for sale. You guys can buy physical copies of my books now. You guys find like all of them are in my link, and they're called Art Block. And they're full of doodles, kind of like these. These doodles that show and help you, and they just fill the pages full of lessons and full of cool stuff. right? So if you guys just flip to any page, you guys can learn some new poses, you guys can learn some new skills, and if you guys feel like you guys want to too as well, you guys can tune into the live streams and then find the page that matches it, and you guys can see me draw it as well. So thank you guys so much. If you guys feel like supporting, that is the best way to do so, and you guys get something really cool out of it. So consider buying one of my books if you guys have not. The next one is going to launch in about a week and a half. And that's going to be Coffee Break Doodles number 2. Coffee Break Doodles number 2. And that one is my gallery of favorite sketches that I've done. So Coffee Break Doodles is my personal art book collection. Art Block is the teaching tools that we use, but Art Block is Coffee Break Doodles is essentially my art book. So if you guys like my artwork and you guys have ever seen any of my finished work, then you guys are going to want to buy that book. The Art of Rodgon. All right. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for being my friends. Thank you for being my drawing buddies. For all 200 or plus people still in the chat, you guys are the best. Thank you for staying through the whole thing. You got, go to my link in bio. So if you guys want printed ones, they're sold through Amazon. And if you guys want some digital ebooks, they're simple to just download onto your phone. So you guys have the reference anywhere and they are right there. So you guys can decide which option you guys want. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Take care. Go to my link in my bio. If you guys want to buy them, you guys can go to my Instagram as well. I have them there. And you guys can find them by just typing in Rodgon in any Google thing. I'm pretty well known. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Take care. Peace.